Coming up this week on the Digital Lifestyle Show 795, Richard and Gary here. We've got lots to talk about. We get corrected, Richard and I get corrected on EV total cost of ownership. We're talking about some of the exchange problems that were affecting people with on-prem exchange server, some of the cloud issues that are affecting like Teams, new builds of Windows 10. We've got some insider news with those new builds and lots more. So let's get straight to Richard and Gary. There's Gary. Gary and Richard, good evening.
Good evening. I guess you were waiting for me because you didn't have anything to talk about tonight.
we were waiting for you, but that yes, we were. I was being smug about moving to the exchange to the cloud, but it's not always a good thing to do in the IT business. So I'm not being. I don't want to record that because that's always backfires on you.
Yeah, never be smug.
yeah. That's what experience has taught me. But we were saying. What a fun show it was last week, talking to Johan about 1K programming. He was proper hardcore on his 1K programming.
Oh, yeah, very hardcore.
That was a great show, that was.
Yeah, I really enjoyed talking about that. And amazing what you can get onto the little ZX81. Mine's here now. And actually, I got a question for listeners. What's the best way of getting the old Spectrums and the old ZX81s hooked up to a HDMI monitor? I had a look for some various. You really want UHF to HDMI, but I didn't seem to see many things. I know the Spectrum you can mod it to make it to remove the modulator, so that it's just video out, which you can then get video out to HDMI. But I wondered whether there was just anything that would do the tuning.
Possibly. I would think so, although I'm sure there are some mod kits. I know even for the old Texas Instruments 99448, you can mod the VDP chip to output VGA. And I think recently, I think it might have been on Adrian's Digital Basement, the YouTube channel. He was showing off an FPGA VIC2 chip for the Commodore 64, which output HDMI. So it might be better to do a mod, and I would be astonished if there's not a very active modding community out there for the Sinclair machines.
Yeah, I think there probably is. So I might have to have a look at that. But to be honest, the emulators are pretty good for that. You can just work out the box, especially on the Pi. Or I was using the 81 emulator that we talked about last week. I fired that up, and that's really good actually, because you can go from a ZX80 all the way up to the Sam Coupe, and various Timex models in between. So it's a really good emulator, that one, and it comes with all the ROMs as well, which some emulators you have to source your own ROMs. So that's definitely one worth checking out. But yeah, it's good fun going back to some of the old K machines, the old computers like that. But what is I think it just shows though is that really, as with all games, really the fun is the game itself, and it doesn't really matter whether it's got high res graphics, color, or 4K video or whatever. If it's a fun game, it's a fun game, and that'll keep you entertained.
Yeah, that's true.
Although I did play 3D Monster Maze, and while I still really like it, it doesn't quite have the impact that it did on me in 1982.
Yes.
It is a little bit pedestrian compared to playing something like Doom on Xbox Game Pass.
Yes.
Yeah, but good fun. And when you think how far we've come with computing now, these devices, it's amazing, really. So I did get inspired to watch something from our friends at the Retro at the Cambridge. Let me get the name right. The give us a correct naming for our friends in Cambridge.
History.
Yeah, yes, that's Centre for Computer History in Cambridge. Yeah, and the Micro Men's show that we've talked about, a film that was the sort of the comedy look back at the recreation of the events of the creating the early BBC Micros and Spectrums and everything, and they've got a watch along with Chris Curry and Herman Hauser and who else? Steve Ferber, I think, is on it as well. So the three that are featured in the show, yeah. And they're watching along with watching the film and sort of commenting, well, that never happened, and some bits of, well, that did happen. So that's well worth watching. They did a great job at the centre there to record that video. So I'll try and remember to include a link in the show notes. But it's worth watching it just to see their reactions to some of the, and obviously seeing themselves being portrayed by the actors. It's quite good fun. I do like that film. Right, so we've got lots to talk about. Some of it's enterprisey, some of it's not. Some of it's very consumery and things going away again. We got things going away, and we did have some new builds as well. So I wanted to start with. I know it's not enterprisey computing is not really our everyday topics, but it's something that I know it's affected a lot of people, and that's this Exchange on-prem issue that cropped up a couple of weeks ago, and it's causing a lot of people a lot of gnashing of teeth. And I guess this is another story why all this cloud computing is so important. So what's the background on the story, Richard? Start us off.
Yeah, so this is the holes in Exchange. Basically, so well, not holes, but some vulnerabilities in on-premises versions of Exchange. Where some miscreants were able to install backdoors into Exchange, effectively install shells which they could then take control of the servers, pretty much, as I understand it. Now, the problem with it is that no one's, I think, 100% sure how long these have been around. I mean, I think it dates back at least to the start of January, if not the end of last year. I'm sure Gary might know a bit more, but that's when I think these vulnerabilities began to circulate, and then what happened since? Obviously, there was a lot of investigations. It was kept very quiet because that's the correct and proper thing to do when you find a vulnerability, you notify people and give them an opportunity to fix it. But I think what happened was with this, it became so sufficiently severe that by, I think, was it the Microsoft confirmed it, I think, in February. And then at the start of March, the patches appeared to plug these 0-day flaws, which means really, those flaws were out there being exploited. And I think the problem is they realized there were potentially tens of thousands, if not more, Exchange servers worldwide potentially compromised, because the problem is you wouldn't necessarily know as an administrator if your server had been compromised. That, I think, was one of the major problems. Mm. And so suddenly, it wasn't just a case of applying the patches. You had to actually, check the server. You had to check if those backdoors had been installed. If they had been installed, you had to check what data's been lost. And I think that's been one of the major problems. I think the European Banking Authority was hit, I think the weekend before last, and they had to pull their servers offline when they realised that the backdoors had been installed. Get them cleaned, but then perform a very detailed audit to find what data had actually been, pulled off those servers. So that, I think, is the problem. I think there's still quite a few thousand out there, and of course we should say this is on-premises Exchange only. It's very enterprisey. Microsoft would dearly like everybody to obviously move Exchange to the cloud, although we'll get onto the cloud in a minute. Things that have happened there. So if your Exchange was hosted in the cloud by Microsoft using Microsoft 365, you were okay. If you were running an Exchange server on premises, then there's a good chance it would have happened. Because what happened when the balloon went up and it became public, then a whole load of criminals began to scan all the servers and just hunt for servers that had any kind of, that hadn't been patched yet. So yeah, it's been a very stressful few weeks for IT administrators, I'm sure.
Yeah, and it was one of those occasions where I was glad we migrated to the cloud a couple of years ago, because I did, up until a few years ago, run an Exchange server, and like you said, the communication. I mean, I don't. Perhaps because I'm not watching the Exchange server because I don't have one anymore. The communication was seemingly like it was just an update, and then suddenly it was like the panic. You need to check to see whether you've already vulnerable. I think that's what caused the most. But like you said, that's what really caused most of the problems. Putting the patches on is easy, but because the problem is these patches come out, and you always want to be up to date and prompt with those patches, but there's always the risk that if you just whack the patches in that come straight away and you're one of the first people to do it. You're one of the first people to find problems with the patches, and then you could experience things like blue screens when printing.
Yeah. Yes. We'll get on to that in a minute, shall we?
Yeah, exactly. So so there's always that dilemma when you're managing your own servers, is to be prompt with the patching, but also not. You can't run test. Well, I suppose some organizations have test servers, but a test exchange servers as well. But quite a lot of places would have had a single exchange server, and you just apply the patches when they come out.
Pretty much, yeah. I mean, I think that the real problem here is how long
You're back.
Oh, I'm back. Oh, good. If you look at the KrebsOnSecurity.com site, Brian Krebs, researcher, he's published quite a good timeline of this whole exchange mayhem. And there's one point where thousands more servers were getting hacked every hour. So this month it was that bad. You had the White House expressing concern over how big this attack was, and how many servers had backdoors installed. I mean, another victim, again, to put it in context, I think the Norwegian Parliament had their email taken offline as well, because again it was attacked. And although they suffered an email phishing attack, I think last year, this time around, of course, it wasn't the same people. But yeah, it's one thing to patch. It's another thing to the fact this had been here for some time, and people were being attacked without realizing it. They had these shells installed, and they didn't know it was happening. So yeah, I mean, I suspect there's still issues. So yeah, it'd be a thing to think about migrating to the cloud and also installing patches. But as you say, going to the cloud, installing patches have their own risks.
Yeah, so we'll come back to the cloud. So this other one nearly caught me out, but I was dealing with some people that were contact with this. So this is a Patch Tuesday, last Tuesday. So we had new insider builds and some patches for that. But also there was just a generic one that sort of goes out to the release versions. But one of those patches had a bit of a nasty issue if you use certain types of printers.
Yeah, this was bad. And it's bad because kind of a similar thing happened last year. I know it's not quite the same thing, because last year, I think it was back in June, there was just an ordinary set of patches, and then some users began to get error messages when they tried to print. This time around, they've upped the ante. It's not error message; it's full on blue screen of death. So you'd kind of try and print, and you get a blue screen of death. And Microsoft did try and play it down a bit, but I had a number of people get in touch with me saying that it's happening to a lot of printers. And I gather it's to do with the Type 3 drivers, which I believe are ones that come from the printer manufacturer, not from Microsoft, I believe, is the affected printers. And so this happened last week. And people received the update, and suddenly when they tried to print, they got a blue screen, which, of course, when you've got people remote working or homeschooling, that's an issue. It's a really big issue for point-of-sale systems. It was an issue for photo printers. Lots of people suddenly found their printers being broken. I think some of the vendors affected, again, Microsoft has said certain printers, they've not named which ones, but I know of some Kyocera printers, Ricoh printers.
Kyocera, yep.
Yeah. And so that, again, you get these patches, you install them because they contain useful things. You need to have your security patches installed. It's very important to stay up to date. But equally, you have to trust that it's not going to break things. And these things should have gone through testing by the insider room. So I'm very surprised that a patch with a bug this severe got out there. And it was so severe that Microsoft have had to issue an out-of-band patch to fix it, which is an indication, I think, of how seriously they took this issue. I think today, as we record, is the 16th. I think the out-of-band patch appeared on the 15th. So less than a week after they released this this broken update, which affected certain users, not all users, just certain users, when they tried to print. And I mean, I am concerned about the testing that's happened here because it should have been caught. It really shouldn't have gone out with this being broken. Not for as many devices and Windows 10 installs as it did.
Yeah, and then this is back to that dilemma then of, do you quickly install all the latest patches or do you wait? And what I use WS Server, the Windows Service Update Server. to deploy those patches. So we have a test group first, which we deploy them to, and we hadn't finished testing it basically. So as soon as I saw the blue screen issues, we just stopped rolling that patch into our test users. So so it didn't really cause any issues for us. But I was helping someone during the week who had last week who had that exact same problem, and it wouldn't let them uninstall it either. It was coming up saying this is a critical patch or something, and it wouldn't uninstall it. Just grayed out the uninstall button. So
that's right. Yeah, it was not. It was not fun to do. I mean, it could be rolled back, but it was difficult. I think even the fix is an optional patch as well. So you have to actually, you have to do it. Of course, you won't know you need it until you've had your blue screen. So my advice would be, if you're about, if you've perhaps just try and do a print and make sure you've saved everything before you print anything out, just in case.
Yeah. So here's what it looks like. This is on my release preview machine. This is the optional patch there that it's telling me to download and install. But when you read Microsoft's article, they said you only need to install it, obviously, if you're affected by those prints. And I don't print here, so I'm not affected, so I won't need to install it.
Exactly, yeah. But I think there's a lot of people at home who print who are going to be hit by it. So
yeah, I'm always surprised by the number of people that print from home, that are home workers, because people said, I need a printer at home. I said, well, why? What are you doing with these prints? Because everything's electronic now. You can store everything as a PDF. We've got terabytes of storage in the cloud. Why do you print stuff? But some people love it.
I mean, I never used to print at all until homeschooling began, and now I print a lot for homeschooling, and that's certainly been. But apart from this, I mean, I think I've actually broken my old inkjet printer, because it has lasted for 10 years. This last year has killed it. It's just
10 years use of 1 year.
Exactly, pretty much. Yeah, it's like it's sat there gathering dust, and suddenly, way, and now I've got to kind of very careful easing of paper into it, very carefully, then push the paper in so it sucks it round.
I suppose that's one of the things with this pandemic, people working from home and home, particularly like you said, schooling. I suppose people are buying a lot more printers now. There's cheaper ones as well.
I mean, there was a period where you couldn't get webcams or printers.
Yeah, I don't think I always try to avoid printing anything.
Well, I guess you can, and obviously we can all operate in the cloud as long as the cloud is up.
Yes.
Microsoft, they've had a really bad time of things, haven't they, for Microsoft?
So, Gary, were you trying to do any Teams meetings yesterday?
Yeah, I was rather. I know we're working. What is it with authentication at Microsoft?
I don't know. Again, it's I mean I was fussing just now about testing, but again, it's one of those things where they as I understand it, they rolled out a change to how they were doing authentication, which is, let's face it, we all remember what the incident of, was it last year or the year before, where everything went wrong for a while, and it basically appeared to break a zero active directory authentication from what I could tell, which broke, obviously lots of services depend on that service working. So when that service doesn't work, lots of things stop working that maybe are surprisingly connected. And then they couldn't roll it back, could they? It took them a while to, they said it'll be 50 minutes to roll it back, and it just went on and on and on. And I'm a little concerned how that got through testing as well, because I remember talking to Brad Anderson, who used to be in charge of the Microsoft 365 stuff. He used to say that when there's an outage, his phone would go off and he'd be on the phone to engineers immediately. So obviously he's now left Microsoft, but I imagine there was some quite exciting phone calls.
Yeah, I suspect this one got raised up quite high.
And the thing is, like you said, it's the backbone of so much stuff now, isn't it? Everything from Visual Studio to Teams to two-factor authentications, all using this stuff in the background.
Well, exactly. Yeah. I mean, as we were saying earlier, when Exchange has a wobble, it's not the end of the world. Your emails might get queued up for half an hour. So it's not the end of the world. But we're also dependent on instant messaging and all these online things. And if you can't use these tools, then everything suddenly stops. Visual Studio online is a great example, and if you're a developer, you've got your Azure pipelines, all these things start to stumble and break. But I think the big thing for Microsoft would have been the loss of Teams. That was the embarrassing thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's amazing. And in a relatively short period of time, I've gone from seeing Microsoft talk about Teams and thinking, well, I don't really get what, they've got these. What is this? Is it SharePoint? Is it Skype? I don't get it. To spending all day using it and doing all sorts with it. It's amazing in a couple of years how it's become the center of everybody's strategy, really, now.
It certainly is.
So everything's seems to be back up and running now, I guess.
Well,
yes,
as we're recording on Teams, I guess it is.
Yeah, I mean, Teams came back. I think it was the remainder one that had some problems was Intune, which is the deployment tool. That was still iffy this morning, but I think on the whole that should be back up as well now. But I think Teams obviously was the big boy.
Yeah, and like you said, the very nature of Teams being an instant tool is where you when that doesn't work, what do you do? And I guess people have got so used to all these instant communication tools and services and the cloud-based ones, you just expect to work all the time, and they use them out of hours and everything else. So yeah, it luckily didn't cause me too much grief, that one, so I wasn't too bothered by that. I tell you what, I have got the do get the notifications up on my phone because I've got the Office 365 Administrator app, which I use for the for my own domain, and that has notifications. So it came up yesterday saying under investigation and then service degraded. So you do get those notifications on your phone before the idea, I guess, being before the users start to tell you. But if Teams is down, how do you tell them? You can't call them. Yeah, so it's been interesting week for the cloud. I mean, it happens to other vendors as well. I remember when a few months ago Gmail was off, wasn't it? And I think that was an authentication issue, wasn't it?
I can't remember that.
Yeah.
Authentication is difficult. I mean, it's one of those things you have to get absolutely right, because if you don't get it right, people get to see things they shouldn't get to see. So it's difficult to get right, but I think they would test it.
Yeah.
You're right though. It is, especially with the way that the handoff services and the way that things are with that now. Where this token gets handed off to this, and it's a layered system that one bit of it fails and it all falls over. Now, something else that stopped working this week, but this is by design, which I never got one of these devices. But do you remember the Harman Invoke speakers that had Cortana built into them?
Yeah.
Again, you need to get the Simon Bates R-Tune bed going. Yeah. This is it's just a sad story of Cortana, isn't it? Obviously, I mean, I think, obviously the Harman Kardon Invoke was, the take on the Amazon device as in the assistant, and I mean, back in the day, Microsoft had great plans for Cortana. Obviously, we used Windows phones and Windows Mobile, and Cortana was a big part of that. I think when that began to was going to wither and die as well, and as of this month, I think it's been pulled off, hasn't it? It's Cortana has been turned off on those devices. Those very nice speakers are now jumped up Bluetooth speakers. All the intelligence has been basically yanked,
lobotomized.
Very sad. Yeah.
It's
I mean, it's the end of an era, but let's face it, Apple have joined in too and discontinued the HomePod. So
yeah, it's all going.
Yeah. So I didn't realize this until you mentioned this to me. So what's happened? They just stopped making them.
Well, they brought out the HomePod Mini, which was only, I think, about $99, and that they're still going for. But the original HomePod's $50 mark. It wasn't cheap. It was very expensive compared to Amazon devices or Google devices. And to be frank, didn't do a whole lot more. In fact, probably a bit less because the Apple ecosystem was nowhere near as advanced as or as complete as what you can do with both the Amazon and Google devices. Although as a speaker, it was excellent. It was really good, and I think they were updating it even as recently as this year. You got Dolby Atmos and all kinds of mods and things. But I think because it's never been that much of a consumer hit, I think even the Apple aficionados, I mean, obviously Jason, I'm sure, has got 12, but Jason aside, it never really sold in the quantities Apple wanted, I think. And certainly when the HomePod Mini came out, I think at that point the writing was probably on the wall. And I mean, maybe there'll be a HomePod 2 this year. I would doubt it. I'll be surprised if there is. I think perhaps Apple's realised that the price point for the HomePod is really that sort of $99 mark for the HomePod Mini.
Yeah, it's you're right, because I remember it being expensive at the time, and when the competition is the various Amazon ones and the Google ones, it really is hard to justify those prices. If you want a really premium speaker, then you're into sort of Sonos prices then, and the Sonos One has got the assistants built in as well. So, and then you're buying into the whole Sonos ecosystem. So yeah, I could never really see who the target market was for that. And yeah, it just shows you that you know, as Apple, as great they are with their marketing and their products, not everything sells and as gets the market.
Absolutely. I mean, obviously they have kept on plugging away with Apple TV, but I think the HomePod was perhaps a slightly odd device in that it didn't obviously connect to anything. So it didn't connect to your phone. They've obviously had their wearables have been very successful, and it was trying to break into a market that was already there. I mean, I'll be interested to see how well the Apple TV does now. They've begun to sort of really plug the Apple TV service quite hard. How well that hardware survives as well, because obviously it's up against things like Fire Sticks and Chromecast, what have you. And Apple has begun to push the Apple TV service elsewhere. So that might be the next bit of hardware that Apple may just say, yeah, what's the point?
Yeah, that's backed up by I suppose the difference with that is it's backed up by their own content creation, because they're doing their own original shows, and you do see those advertised. But again, like you said, at some point, if the numbers don't add up, then it. Well, I mean,
I'll show you. What I mean is the Apple TV hardware. I think the Apple TV service is probably where Apple sees a large chunk of its future, because services is where it's going to go. I mean, at some point, the hardware will lose its luster and its shine. That's, I think, and in inevitability. But if you've got the service behind it, then you can sell that service and get your £10 or $10 a month subscriptions, no matter what device people use, which I think is one of the things that likes of Microsoft and Co have done. They've realised that you don't really care what you use as long as you're paying us a monthly fee for using it.
Yeah. And the only trouble that I found with these TV services now is that there's just, again, it's a fragmentation, isn't it? If you want, Disney Plus, and there's a good content selection on there with the recent Star channel added to it. You want to watch 24 from the beginning? It's all on there. I noticed. I was going to the other day. And then you've got a lot of stuff's on Amazon. You've still got Netflix. I've still got my BritBox subscription, although I've watched all of Doctor Who and all Blake 7 now, so I think I've probably exhausted most of it.
Yes.
Mr. Ben's on it.
Excellent.
And Rent a Ghost. But not from the beginning.
Ghost.
No, unfortunately, the Rent a Ghost is just the final series of Rent a Ghost, not from the original. I was hoping they'd go back to the beginning and get the very first one from there.
But the last one wasn't so good.
Yeah. But yeah, so you've got all these services now, and they're always just, you look at it and you think, oh, it's just this, and oh, it's just that, and then they add up to a lot of money, and then you're paying your broadband provider on top of that, and these services where, as we mentioned many times, we were hoping it would be all in one place under your Windows Media Center, is now fragmented everywhere.
Yeah.
We looked at, I think Jackson was looking at this BT Sports subscriptions, and he was thinking of just getting some of those, but they're incredibly expensive. But then he said, "Oh, look, it's got some good offers on it." But when you go through the small print, you realize it's on the good offers are if you sign up for 36 months of their subscription, their actual cable, installation, the broadband, which he doesn't need because he just uses our broadband. So to actually just get the sport itself was really expensive. So yeah, it gets even more expensive. You get all these TV channels, and it gets even more expensive if you're a sports fan. And I'm watching the Formula One, which is through my Sky package. But even outside of the Sky-controlled countries like UK, Germany, and Italy, that Formula One have got their own TV channel, which is on their app as well. So you can see where this goes. It's just going into more and more subscriptions. And I don't know where it all ends, and because they're easy to sign up to, and then you've just got to remember to stop, like me with the BritBox, just cancel it when you've finished watching everything. But I always think, there might be something else coming on.
Yeah, definitely. It's I think certainly as far as TV is concerned, sports fans have been historically gouged quite badly, but now of course we're all being gouged because as you say, like to Netflix and BritBox and things, it's getting very, very expensive.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, and of course, at the moment, there's not a huge amount of things you can do. So it's one area. There's one thing you can do is to watch TV and stream media services. So that's what people are doing. So I think Disney Plus, they launched just at the right time.
Who did? Yeah,
they did indeed in the UK, didn't they? Yeah, it's very cunning.
Yeah. Yeah, it was a cunning plan.
My streaming here's got a lot faster this week. I know some of you know I've moved recently and had been on a particularly slow broadband, but I've just had City Fibre installed in the last week, which was a bit chaotic, and not from City Fibre's point of view. Problem it was they can't supply the domestic market directly. They can do supply business people, so they have to go through one of the other providers, and the only one we could actually go through was caused all sorts of chaos and didn't send all the bits out in the right time and got the wrong dates and all sorts of things. But City 5 themselves work really well, and I've got 500 megs up speed and 500 meg down now, which is really good.
Yeah, excellent. So you plenty of Netflix streaming working on that.
Oh, plenty of streaming my end. Yeah, no problem at all.
Yeah. Well, it makes a big difference that though. Is for the uploads and things like that when you're doing calls and relying.
The up speed is incredible. I mean, what I've really noticed is I've been uploading a couple of YouTube videos recently, and the difference in time from before and after. I had to re-upload the same video, and before it took me 28 hours to upload this one video, and this morning I've uploaded it in 15 minutes. It's incredible.
Yeah, and then once you get it, you really get reliant on that.
Yeah, you do
as well, don't you? Yeah.
Well, one thing that actually has surprised me is how much more responsive Alexa is since I've had this speed. Because I guess you don't think about it, but everything goes up to the cloud for processing, doesn't it? So if you've got a slow upload speed, that's going to take longer for that voice data to go up. Whereas now it's almost instantaneous, and certainly things like turning lights on and off, it's got a lot quicker. So it's sort of unexpected side effects. Yeah, and I think you just need more and more bandwidth. Though your bandwidth usage never goes down. It seems, especially with all smart home devices and cameras and everything else. That's something that I found since I put in the new power over the Ethernet over power that we put in, and in the house here, that everything is much better now, and everybody's much happier because they all get the decent bandwidth. And two teenagers are definitely a source of a drain of bandwidth, but it copes fine. And I actually with Sky, and long-term listeners will remember when I was on the 2 meg line. That wasn't good. We used to get them to log off. I said, turn off your Netflix before I could do the show. Yeah, I remember those days well.
Yeah. So I'm glad I'm not on that. Because especially if you're downloading new builds of Windows 10, you need to get those down and installed on your machine. Which we did get a few builds last week, or a few things to test last week anyway. But in the theme of the show is things going away, I think, this week, isn't it? Because we got a new build of Windows 10 21332, but things went away on it.
No, I'm still here. I'm just I don't remember. I'm just thinking to myself, I don't remember that going away, actually.
Okay. So yeah, 2.332 had a lot had improvements for the news and interest bar, and the improvements being is they're taking it away. So that's being a bit facetious, but yeah, that effectively what they've done. They've said they've had some good feedback on the news and interest, and they've made some visual changes to it and how it pops out when you hover your mouse or click on it. I think you had to click on it in the previous one. You're going to be able to hover or click on it in the updated version. But they say because they've repackaged and they're re-rolling this feature out, they've removed it temporarily. So if you have a look on your machine now on the dev channel build, you'll find it's gone. The little icon's gone.
It's still on mine.
At some point it will disappear, I think.
Oh, okay. Okay. It's just to say is it's still in. Admittedly, I close it, so it's.
Yeah. They said it's coming back. So don't worry, it is coming back. Yeah, let me show you the exact text. But yeah, it's coming back. So I like an update on this. So yeah, it says, don't worry, we hope to make news and interest available to everyone in the dev channel soon.
Oh, jolly good. Hooray. Can't wait.
Yeah.
Can they not just say we're using this to test out some tech that we need for the new Windows shell? I just am done with, because no one really cares about the news and interest for it. I can't believe that anyone really does anyone actually care about it? I mean, perhaps I'm too old and I've seen it enough times in Windows, various types of news tickers and sort of panels appearing showing news and interest, weather and stuff. I honestly don't care. I'm much more interested to know if they're using it as a way of putting in the plumbing to do something much more exciting in a few months' time.
I actually think that they as in Microsoft, the Windows 10 team really like this feature. I think there's quite a bit of work going on it. So, like you said, it could be because it's a good way of testing some of the UI changes. But yeah, so it's coming back. I'm pretty sure it's coming back. It's not just it's not like sets where it disappeared and said we'll come back soon and never did. I think it probably will come back. But
well, I mean, I'd be very pleased if they could perhaps invest as much time in making printers work as they're spending in. That'd be good. Do that, guys. I'm sorry, but it's like, I mean, banging on about news and interest, it's like, it's a huge paragraph. You broke loads of printers on Windows 10. And it's like, you can't be getting obsessed with news and interest. It's exciting. No, you broke the printers. Fix your quality. I'm going to get off my soapbox now, but I'm a bit grumpy about this sort of thing.
Richard's rants returns.
Yes. No, I'm sorry, but it's I mean, news and interest. I mean, I've seen it so many times in Windows, and it's a lovely thing. I hope it's a way of getting some plumbing in there for more exciting stuff, because otherwise, yeah, I worry for the Windows team if that's true.
Yeah.
The other changes of this build, you'll be pleased to know, in the theme of being taken away, is 3D Viewer and Paint 3D are no longer pre-installed on clean installs.
But I tell you one really useful feature, and that's the Windows V is now going everywhere, which does paste as plain text, which is a feature that I've wanted to be in Windows pretty much since as soon as copy and pasting of rich text happened, and I realised it was awful. This is Windows, instead of Control V, Windows V to paste plain text is a brilliant feature, and I cannot wait for that to be everywhere.
Yeah, definitely. And it's something I use, and every now and again, it somehow syncs up between all my devices, and I go on the clipboard and I see text from other devices on there. And I think this is amazing. I wish it would do it all the time, because it would be really useful, but it doesn't.
Yes.
But it is a nice. Cloud clipboard is brilliant. I really the Control V clipboard is brilliant. I do like that. So it's good to know that's rolling out. There was a lot of fixes in here as well. So they fixed, if you go Surface Pro X, they stopped it blue screening, which is good when it resumes from sleep. So that's a good thing. And there wasn't that many known issues in there as well. The issue list is slightly smaller, but again, things are pretty quiet on the Windows development from what we see at the moment. I know there's rumours of Sun Valley and big updates coming later in this year, but nothing that's been officially talked about. So we don't really know. But yeah, this upcoming stuff that we're testing at the moment isn't visually very different at the moment.
Absolutely, yeah. And of course, it's also worth pointing out as well that in these inside builds, they are previews, so one shouldn't expect things to be stable and bug-free. Hence, the blue screen of death on the Surface Pro X is kind of to be expected if you're using a preview build, because things do blow up all the time. That's what they're here for. And
we did also got last week an update to 21H1, which we do know is coming soon. So 19043.899 is the current beta on that, which that had a big long list of fixing actually, where it doesn't contain any new features, but a huge long list of fixes that are rolling out with that. So we don't know officially, but 21H1 first half of 2021. So what do you think we're looking like last year, April, May time?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, there are a few things in it. I mean, it's interesting that it's Windows Insiders were the only ones that actually got that patch to fix the printers, because it did include the fix to stop the deals with the blue screen of death when you print. That appeared, and of course the other thing in it as well in this particular release was the stripping out of old the legacy Edge as well happened for Insiders in this build. So Legacy went, and the new Edge appeared.
Right. Yeah. That's I've sort of forgotten about Legacy Edge now. It's been that long since I've used that one. But you do see some people.
How quickly you forget?
Yeah, I know. Yeah. I do like my Edge Canary. I like, and I'm a big fan of the side. I know you don't particularly like the tabs that run down the side instead of across the top. But there's a flag that I think one of the builds now where you can actually, if you're running the tabs down the side, you can get rid of the title bar as well. So it shoves everything up a bit. So you really, if you've got a widescreen monitor, you can have those tabs there, and you really get the full use of this top to bottom of your screen now, which is pretty good. So I do like that. So I really like enjoying using Edge.
That's true. Although you've obviously still got a HoloLens.
The original HoloLens still has Edge. That's where I do see that actually.
Yes, it's still there. It's not going to go away anytime soon. No. I don't even think there's even a test build yet, is there, of new Edge on HoloLens one? I know there's one on the Xbox One. There's a test build of new Edge on that. Although again, the browser is still Legacy Edge there, and of course, Legacy Edge is still on the Surface Hub device as well. So Surface Hub 1, I think, has got Legacy Edge.
I'd be very surprised if the original HoloLens got the new Edge.
I'm not quite sure when support ends on the HoloLens one.
Yeah, I'm not sure. But what I found is that some things have stopped working. Actually, the BritBox doesn't work on the HoloLens. But Netflix does, so that's okay. But yeah, so I still am actually using it when I play with the HoloLens. But I do like new Edge, so I've been using that for a while as well. One other thing I found as well, which is when I was doing the insider testing, is quite a lot of Microsoft apps. If you're on the Insider program, you have to be on the beta ring to beta channel, I should say, not ring. Get into trouble for saying ring. The beta channel to see the new features. I was playing with your phone, and on my dev channel device, it had the older. It had the features that didn't have all the features that are in the beta one. So the dev and release just get the standard feature set, but the beta one was getting some new feature set. So in your phone now, there's some toggle buttons there to turn on and off your Bluetooth, turn on Do Not Disturb. I think you can turn off the sound as well. So the kind of things that you would get your phone out of your pocket to toggle on and off. Maybe you're going into a meeting and you put it on Do Not Disturb. You can do that directly in your phone now, but only if you're on the beta channel, not release preview, release, or the dev. So another device that I need to do some testing. But yeah, your phone pretty good actually. I do like I like those new features, being able to toggle those off. So that's pretty cool. I do a video on that as well, which I posted last week. And just as I was doing the video, your phone stopped wanting to talk to my Surface for some reason as well. just as I was, I tested it all. Thought, okay, yeah, I'll do the video now, and then none of it worked. And then then all of a sudden it all came back again. But that's what, like you mentioned earlier, Richard. You're on the beta or preview rings or whatever channels you're on. You are testing development software, so you've got to be wary of that. What else? I did have a shout out I wanted to give to Corey555 on Twitter. I was chatting to him on. He's now gone and got a Surface Book 3 and he was looking for what dock to get. So I think he's gone for the Surface Dock 2 on that, which I think is probably the best option with the Surface. The Surface docks are pretty good. I know you can use the USB-C type docks, but I've got the original Surface dock here that I use with my Surfaces, and it works really well.
I've got a reader's email, which is quite a good one actually. So this dates back for 2 weeks. This is based on the conversation we were having about cars at the end of the show before last, and this is from a guy called Paul. Paul is an ex-rally driver, used to race in the British Series, so he's a real petrol head. He says, as you know, Gary, I'm a huge petrol head, but I cannot let the comments at the end of last week's show stand. You rightly said that they should be taken into account total cost of ownership. This is so true. Yes, I'm a petrol head. Yes, I can certainly see where Ian is coming from in his choice of vehicle. However, I still have worked out that it is way cheaper for me to drive an EV. I've actually done the figures. I've had my Listen Leaf now for 4 years, and I looked at an alternative car at the same time, which was a larger SUV. Even though the cost of the initial purchase of my Leaf was £18,000 more expensive than the SUV, I have actually saved over £19,500 worth of fuel costs in the time I've had the vehicle. Fuel and maintenance costs, sorry. That sounds a lot, but it does actually work out when you've had the vehicle for a long time. They say now that you can actually recoup the cost of ownership of a petrol vehicle, so an EV over a petrol vehicle, in under 15,000 miles. So I think it's really important to look at total cost of ownership. Full stop. Exclamation mark, exclamation mark, exclamation mark.
Wise words. I mean, you can see those down to so many things.
Yeah, I mean, that exactly, when you're doing when I would move my day job doing one of my, IT projects, I take into that, that's the first thing you take into account, doesn't it? So yeah, probably wasn't exactly.
I was just thinking out though that I was trying to do the maths and working out how he got £15,000 worth of fuel costs, and he must have doing a lot of mileage. That's all I can say. But that's one of the things with EVs, you do tend to do an awful lot of mileage, and you don't even think about it.
Yeah.
I mean, again, I am still agonising, as you know, but it's for me, what's currently ruling the EV out is looking at some of the trips that I do, where I can't guarantee that I'm going to have access to a charger at the other end. And that's one of the issues. And it's like, say, a 250, 300 mile journey. I think, okay, I've got to plan carefully whether there's going to be charge points. Are they going to work with the car I'm planning to get? And because the joy of an EV, I think, is when you just say you commute from home to the office and back, and it's like having a petrol car. It's always full every day. It's always full.
Yeah, absolutely. It's like a phone. You charge it overnight, basically. That's the mentality.
It's purely thinking to myself, those occasional long trips. How many times I'm doing the balancing there. How many times am I going to be doing those sort of trips that I'm going to have to think and worry about it versus how many times it's going to be,
although that's probably going to change, because we've had a couple of things since the last time we spoke about EVs which come up, which is probably worth just quickly mentioning. The government's come in and said they want to see at least 6 EV chargers at the end at every services. I think that's within the next 3 years. which would definitely make a big difference, because as long as we had reliability of those, that would definitely help. And also the other thing which has happened is electricity, which I've mentioned a few times on the show. The reliability of has been an issue. Have just had a big investment by GridServe, who are the people who did the standalone EV service station I mentioned a few months back. And they have actually invested 25% in GridServe have invested 25% in Ecotricity, and are going to actually help Ecotricity replace all their chargers, which have started already. The rugby chargers, I think it's rugby, they're getting 6 chargers in there in the next few weeks. The ground's been broken already. So I think, Richard, as long as you're going to be able to, on the motorways at some point, you probably will be able to find a charger which is working. But the other really big news, which I think is snuck under the radar, is that the biggest provider of service stations in the UK, so petrol stations in the UK, the group which actually owns most of the SO, BP, Shell petrol stations out there, which are not franchised ones, have said they're putting in chargers at all their petrol stations within 2 years. So they're talking about 4 to 6 of them at the busier petrol stations, which would be, again, that would be huge. Make life a lot easier for those journeys you're talking about. But the other thing I would say is that it's virtually impossible to survive somewhere where you can't get power at all, because you can always plug in on 13 and plug.
You've not seen the places I go.
Get a solar panel, put it outside. But equally, I think we have mentioned range as well. I mean, the other thing I don't know if we actually discussed the new Hyundai and Kias which are coming out. I think I did mention the Hyundai on that show, but Kia have just announced their EV6, which looks and that's actually going to be launched at the end of this month, which looks amazing. Some of the specs I've been seeing that for the money they're talking about, that should easily do a friend and half journey, and will be very quick. Rumours say sub 4 seconds to 60, so, which for a family car isn't bad.
I don't drive that fast. It's fine.
But yeah, I do take your point, Richard. I think the arriving at the end of the journey and not being able to charge. If you can charge overnight, it makes all the difference. It's like going to somewhere where you can't plug your phone in to charge overnight. That's
actually a really good metaphor. Yeah, it's the same thing. Oh, you're sat on the phone. You know, I've forgotten the cable, and you snook it. And you think, is my phone going to last?
But the other thing I would say is, I mean, I've had my iPads 2 years now. I've done journeys all around the country, and I've never got to a situation where I've run out of charge. I got close once and that was purely me trying to push the envelope as far as I could, and I could have stopped and charged before I got to that point. But there's anywhere you are in the country, except for some parts of Wales, you're no further than 60 miles from a charger. and Wales is catching up fast.
Yeah, it's I think all those arguments are valid, and the cost of ownership is definitely a valid one. I think it's just the fork-up pricing is a really hard sell.
Yeah,
that's what, and you've got to really go into it in that depth. I mean,
actually, the other point that I got actually off on a quick discussion I was having on Twitter about this was that one thing that you really should look at is the depreciation cost as well, because EVs are holding their values really well. Compared to equivalent petrol vehicles. I mean, in fact, there's actually been some appreciation on some EVs. Some 1-year-old Zoes are actually being sold 3 years later for more than they were bought for. So I think that has to be factored in as well. I mean, you certainly see that as most people don't buy their cars outright these days. I mean, we may spend cash and get them out, but most people buy them on some form of payment deal, and that they all tend to be based on what the depreciation is going to be over time. So that becomes a fairly interesting factor. And certainly in the early days, and a lot of people would probably think back and look at the figures if they looked at a few years back. The cost of something like a Leaf when it first came out, the depreciation was being very heavily shown as much lower than it actually turned out to be, because people was expecting the batteries to fail and things like that, which hasn't happened. although some leagues maybe it has had, because the early ones had some issues, but certainly most of the EV cars have had no battery problems at all. So it's really interesting, this whole factor.
You can see that at some point, it would only be justifiable as a choice like a religious choice for choosing your engine. The cost benefit, there won't be a valid argument. It'll just have to be a philosophical physiological choice of saying I want this kind of car. But at the moment, I think you can see the lines. It's
and it's coming, and prices are dropping, and batteries prices, as I said a couple of weeks back, battery costs are coming down rapidly, and I have to say, I don't know how governments may have to step in here or whatever, but there is artificial price inflation going on here because it's been blamed on the battery costs, and the battery costs are not that different from the components they take. Once you strip the components you take out of a petrol car to make an EV, there's a great deal of similarity between the cost of catalytic converters and gearboxes and some of the other stuff you put in a petrol cost car and that battery cost. There's no real justification for that difference.
I've picked up my 118 M Sport, and I do really like it. It's a very nice car.
But when we finally get to meet up this year, you'll all have to come for a run out in the I-Pace and see.
That's a good idea. Yeah, that's a good. We'll do that, and hopefully we'll get to meet up at some point in the future. So hopefully it's getting closer. Definitely getting closer. So, Garry, where can we find you? And people can correct me and
at Garry 2Rs WMA, and people were.
And Richard, where can we find you when people can complain about their Outlook? Or
you can find me on Twitter at Richard_Speed.
So, if anybody has any issues with Teams or Exchange, anything, they might as well just email you rather than Microsoft.
No, please don't do that. Please don't do that.
Well, you can find me at ISDixon on Twitter if you've got any advice for how to convert your retro machines or anything else. We'll be back same time, same place next week, so we'll see you then.
Okay.